So I was saying in the last video that Heidegger is frustrated with the various three philosophical attempts in the history of philosophy of understanding what a thing is, or the nature of a thing. And the problem is we can't get the right phenomenological distance. We can't get the right point of access into what a thing is. He's asking about the thingly character of a thing. Why? Because artworks are things, and in order to understand art, we have to understand artworks. In order to understand artworks, we have to understand things. Artworks, things. What's a thing? He looks at the history of the concept of things and says, can't quite get the right access point. It's interesting, too, as a digression and a side note, Heidegger's understanding of phenomenology is very much, from 1920, it was preoccupied with this. How do I get the proper access point to things? How do I understand fundamental, meaningful experience without distorting it when I reflect on it? And he's very much thinking of Heisenberg here. The Heisenberg, the observer idea that, it's not the uncertainty principle, I forget, it's just the observer effect, I guess, that, there was this idea from Heisenberg that when you, in quantum mechanics, when you observe something, you affect it. Heidegger was very preoccupied with that kind of thinking philosophically and phenomenologically. Now, there's an analogy here. It's not the same thing, obviously. But he is very much aware that when the mind reflects on something, it might take it out of its context and miss the point it's trying to understand. How do we, it's kind of like, phenomenology for Heidegger is kind of like getting something, trying to look at something through a mirror. St. Paul says, now we see through a glass darkly, or we see through a mirror dimly, or whatever in 1 Corinthians 13. Kind of like that. How do I get the proper access to something so I don't distort it when I try to think about it? I don't rationally assault it. And what Heidegger does here is he says, artworks give us the proper access to things. They give us a mediated position where things can be seen in their meaningfulness, in the kind of meaning that Heidegger's interested in. They can be seen in their meaningfulness without distortion, without the distortion of rationality, let's say, on the one hand, where you get in the substance and in the equipmental context in the hylomorphic conception, when they're not too close as it is in sensation. The artwork gives this kind of distance between myself, ourselves, and things, where we can actually see things in their primary, originary is a word he uses, ursprünglich, it just means original, their originary context in terms of lived, meaningful experience, okay? So, art, what's the essence of art? Well, art shows itself in artworks. What are artworks? Artworks are things. What are things? Three philosophical conceptions of things. They all fail. Why do they fail? We can't get the right phenomenological point of access to understand meaningful experience of art as we normally experience it. Meaningful experience of things as we normally experience it. So we turn to artworks to disclose the nature of things to us, okay? Now, here's the thing. Heidegger looks to a pair of peasant shoes in Van Gogh's painting and says, here we get the proper nature of what a thing is, okay? And he rethinks in this part the nature of form and matter in terms of world and earth. So he talks about the artwork actually disclosing the world of the peasant shoes and the earthiness of a shoe and how it's connected to the earth. Now, this is the interesting thing. Okay. Last thing in this video, too. He kind of pulls a switcheroo on us. He kind of pulls a trick on us. It's interesting that he's looking for the nature of a thing, right? And the original context was because he wanted to figure out what artwork is, right? Artwork, thing. And he says, we can't get the right access to a thing, so let's turn to an artwork. Aha. Why? Well, this also gives us insight into the nature of what art is, or an artwork. Artworks are disclosive. They're disclosive of the world of things, which is the meaning of things, and the earthy connection to things. So it's funny, as he kind of goes in a weird kind of circle here, right? I want to figure out what an artwork is. I look to a thing, but I can't get at what a thing is unless I understand an artwork, and a thing shows itself through an artwork. And how does it show itself? As grounded in a conflictual union between earth and world. And we'll say more about that in the next video.